It's more than a little fishy that so many people have found what they were meant to do. What's fishy is that these amazing, great people actually feel that they have found what they were meant to do, that they actually have come to a certainty that there was some task or some ability that they needed to work on and perfect. That's pretty fishy. If these very coolest of self-actualized people are all having the inner certainty that they have found the thing they were meant to do, and they use the phrase, what I was meant to do, then life may actually have meaning. Imagine what that implies, that life may have meaning. If life had meaning, not just an individual life, though that is a lot, even if it only happened once ever, but life, if life had meaning, what would have to be true? You should answer this for yourself. We're not talking about what it means to a person that their life has meaning. We know that would feel great. We know that person would feel okay about things as they were, that they wouldn't be afraid to take risks, to love. No, that's obvious. What you should answer is what it would mean if life, the thing going on all around you, from the center of your being to the farthest sphere of the heavens, if life would somehow have meaning. Answer that, please. You're walking along, everything looks the same, but you now think to yourself, what if life had meaning? Or you think, life has meaning. That's very odd, very special. What is different? Now that life has meaning, doesn't walking feel different? If life had meaning, what wouldn't feel different? Wouldn't everything you once thought about the world suddenly be turned on its head? For me, if life had meaning, there would have to be some order. Perhaps not quite a purpose, but at least an order to everything, more than a molecular order. The, quote, right things would have to happen, at least sometimes. If there are right and wrong things, then at the very least there would have to be some order or purpose to the world. We already agree there is an atomic and molecular order to the world. There is physics. For life to have meaning, there would have to be some communication between me in the broadest sense, and the world, which would require an awareness on the part of the world. The world would have to have some awareness of me, whether or not I had an awareness of it. All our meditation and centering exercises would then be aimed at connecting with the world's awareness. The reason the idea of fate doesn't work is that it is dead, fixed. Who wants that? If the world was aware of us, it would have to be supremely alive. If we missed an important meeting we were supposed to have, fate would decree that we would never be right again. But an aware world would work towards setting up a next meeting. This would imply a universal right and a universal wrong, and there would be parts of the world that would benefit by our success, and parts that would benefit from our failures. This is huge. If life has ever had meaning, that door you just cracked open to admit it lets in a typhoon. But what if every individual cool person who felt their life had meaning was deluded? What if life had no meaning, actually, outside these deluded people, and the world is not at all aware of us? I am fully willing to grant that this is true. Yet, wait, how can this question exist? If this simple what-if question is not ridiculous, We are talking about something that is not settled. Do you see that the question is not settled? When something like this is outwardly unprovable, meaning, even if I know life has meaning, I can't prove it to you. And even if you know life has no meaning, you can't prove it to me. The door is wide open. I proclaim this to be huge. This is the realm of freedom. This is actual freedom. We are absolutely free to decide or believe or prove to ourselves that life has meaning or life has no meaning. Is there anything this huge that we are totally free to decide for ourselves? Not gravity. Try to fly. Not murder. You will feel bad, or people will try to kill you back. Not having two lovers. Someone eventually gets hurt. This is it. True believer. I do not believe you fully understand the significance of this. This is not an intellectual affair. This is the rock upon which your life is built. Do you not think it makes a difference whether you live in a world that is aware of you and communicates to help or hinder your progress, or whether you live in a spiritually dead world of physical, biological forces only? This is the stuff of mythology. Are you one of the indigenous peoples who hear the voice of the trees and the water? Or are you one of the soldiers of the invading army driving out the locals? This is how vast is the difference in the two world views. But wait, you think it is not a decision you have to make. Whether the world is alive or dead is not your affair, you say. You stand there, living your life. The world is outside you, alive or dead. You will wait until it is proven that the world is alive, or proven dead, and live your life in the meantime. Sorry, that's not how it works. We all act as though the world is alive, or the world is dead all the time. Coincidence? Deja vu? I feel like I know you. Ghosts. Timing is everything. Or, screw you. Business is business. Nobody saw me. Dog eat dog. You're on your own. We go back and forth between the two all the time. What's wild is that the more you act out of one point of view, the more proof you have that it is correct. I'll say that again. The more you act out of one point of view, the more proof you have that it is correct. Is the world spiritually alive and aware of me, you? Or is it only biologically and physically connected to me, us? What magic I know of in the world is tied up in this question, and it is a true magic. Depending on which side of the question you fall, the world is alive or dead. As a result, you are lucky or unlucky, or there is no such thing as luck. Both luck and unluck are magic, actually. So if you live in a living world, things happen to help you and things happen to mess with you. Whereas in a dead world, things just happen. The magic comes from the fact that if you live as though it is a living world, you immediately get proof that you are actually living in a living world. And though you wouldn't say it was magic, I find it magical that if you live as though it is a dead world, you also get immediate proof that you are correct. I always wondered what would happen if God appeared in undeniable form, or if a UFO actually landed and space aliens came out. These are the great unanswered questions, aren't they? Is there a God? Is there intelligent life in space? Instead of constantly wondering, decade after decade, about the answers to these great questions, what if we just acted as though we knew the answer? What then? Would humanity suddenly become nice? Would we start being open to strangers? Give up the pursuit of wealth? Of course not. Not if God really appeared, or if space aliens actually landed, that is. God, or the space aliens, would have to physically force us to change, either through God's immense will or laser cannons. It takes more than seeing something to be convinced. It's the convincing that we should be looking at. Showing you a picture I took of God wouldn't do it. You seeing God once and hearing him or her talk to you might have an effect on you while you are standing there shaking. But when you get among your friends and nobody seems that interested in your preaching, you'll probably doubt the whole thing ever happened. God would have to be right there every minute, pushing you around, making you do stuff, for anything to really change in your behavior. That's the point. What is this convincing that we lack? The thing that would make us behave as though there were meaning and awareness in the world. A guy called me once and said he was the Archangel Michael. He said that he had spent years trying to convince everyone about himself and his true identity, and he was telling me all the reasons why I should believe him. I saw pretty quickly there was no way I could talk him out of it. He'd heard every objection. So instead, I said I believed him. I said, okay, you're the Archangel Michael. Now what? What does the Archangel Michael do? That did it. I walked him through the door of belief. He stopped calling. Convincing is not an intellectual process. When you are convinced about something, you act differently. A soldier in those invading armies could have a belief about the world being alive, but still be plowing people under from the seat of his armored vehicle. You can believe in God and still be a crappy person. It's different if you are convinced God is watching everything you do and think. I used to think that belief was the key thing in us, but now I see it is being convinced in the fact of a thing. Instead of a simple intellectual belief, an entire belief system is built, and each of your actions fit the system. I remember wanting to be in love when I was 10. There was a girl I liked, and I wanted to be in love with her. I turned out to be pretty sappy. I choke up when I sing love songs, etc. Back then, instead of loving her because of who she was or how we were together, not knowing what love was, I thought I would get there by saying over and over, I love her, I love her, while thinking of her. I even rocked back and forth while chanting, trying to convince myself. It didn't work. There's a reference to a mustard seed in the Bible as the amount of faith you would need to move a mountain. This use of the word faith there fits my use of the idea of being convinced. There's an immense power in it, and it is our power. We are convinced, or we are not convinced. It's us, and we do it ourselves. Moving mountains might be a metaphor, but it would be accurate if the mountains are in our soul. One use of the word faith is pretty weak, and I've held it in low esteem for most of my life. When you hear people talk about faith, that they have faith something will happen, or they have faith in God, I never thought much of the word or the concept. It's almost the same as hope. Hope can be pretty weak as a force. Hope can actually be negative and stop you from accomplishing a thing you need to do. You can hope things will get better and not actually get up and make things better. Faith can be this way. You can have faith in something as a substitute for actually thinking through the possibilities of the thing. Of course, hope can keep you alive when nothing else will. We just use the words for a wide variety of concepts. In reality, if I know God exists, you may say I have faith, or you may say I believe in God, but in my own soul I have proof. I know God exists. Using the word faith is socially correct, because you don't want to lord yourself over others. But inside this human shell, there is factual, concrete proof. Perhaps the phrase true believer is closer to this level of proof. Not clutching the Bible on your knees, sweating with fear and repeating, I believe, over and over as the storm approaches. True belief has no doubt. True belief might climb up on the roof to get a better view. I remember thinking there weren't many true believers up in New Jersey one rainy day. When the rain was heavy and visibility was way down because of the spray, the cars on the turnpike got real slow. That day I was a true believer, and I was not at all worried about running into anything. But all these atheists or pretend believers went from 70 down to 20, just crawling along, and it was kind of pathetic. If we were all true believers every rainy day, we'd either get home faster or all be dead a lot sooner, depending on, God or no God. I just wondered how it was in places like Utah or Idaho when you couldn't see anything. I guess I won't go find out. Mustard seed. I grew up where roads and sidewalks were icy, so I had several opportunities to have my feet swept out from under me suddenly. While in the air, suspended for a moment in time, I would invariably look down to the ground, utterly convinced that I would hit that ground hard. Sure enough, wham, every time I was right. But later, remembering the moment and the strength of my conviction, I would try to crack the nut. How could I ease up on that conviction? What would happen if I had the tiniest crack in that certainty of falling? Since you share this certainty, you answer that it wouldn't matter, that my conviction had nothing to do with it. All I'm saying is I never gave it a chance. Every single time I pulled myself down to the earth. I wished to crack this mustard seed. The very coolest thing about God, the very most endearing thing, is the absolute inability for any of us to prove his existence to anyone else. Being God, it wouldn't have to be this way. In fact, I can imagine millions and millions of universes where God is obvious and undeniable. To be in one where we can convincingly argue and assert that there is no God points to something most profound, that our individual freedom is paramount. This God of ours made everything here pretty amazing, but the most amazing thing is our freedom to decide for ourselves. Our learning to be independent thinkers must be up there on the top of the list of things important to God. This is usually shocking to evangelists. The fervor of their convictions does nothing to convince anyone else. If God speaks to me, the best I can do is get you to believe in me to believe in my fervor. You may become convinced that God speaks to me like I say, but I cannot show God to you, even if you're there while I'm looking at him. It's the same with scientists who are convinced that they can prove to you that there is no God. Every single proof they have dissipates, burns off like morning fog when they speak to the true believer. It is really wonderful and amazing to watch. We are all on our own here, in a good way. I had a brother who spoke for science and the scientific method. It took quite a bit of argument, however good-natured, to get him to consider the equality of the two sides. Not that they were equal because God is equal to no God, but equal because one side cannot prove there is no God, and one side cannot prove there is. His position, which is science's position, is that you don't need to prove what is obvious, which, come to think of it, is the evangelist's position. For him, God was an addition to the world, and he needed to be shown why someone is adding God to the world. He actually felt that there was no burden on science to prove, for example, that souls do not exist after the body dies. Quote, "Show me what a soul is, and I will show you that it doesn't exist after death," his soul said to me. "Show me God, and I will show you that God does not exist," or something like that. Getting that tiny seed of faith that things are not as you now think they are, or things are actually as you hope they are, getting that seed